you do you do your internship or training for the 2-year period, wherein you are you, as an analyst, you are able to do practically, you're involved in the transaction, whatever they're doing, help people with their research, and usually these don't end up in being absorbed as an associate, which is the entry plan for a postgraduate. So the idea is that most of these guys expect people to move out and for a post graduation, which is the normal course. If when one sees the long term plan for anyone who is trying to kind of do well in the field of finance, you will either need either some kind of certificate course like a CFA or a FRM, or do a MBA from somewhere to be able to get into something for the long term. Most of the places which today take graduates are taking these, structurally they take these 2 years kind of graduate trainee programs. So one, what I told you was the global or Indian investment banks. Commercial banks have also opened up. I know the large banks of the nature of, let's say, ICICI, Axis, HDFC, have graduate trainees which they take in cohorts every year. And I think those are things which can actually migrate down the path where over a period of time you can merge into the management trainee kind of path as well. Then you have even private equity, either the larger guys have a structured program. Some of these guys run a graduate training, again, similar graduate training program, getting guys as analysts and for a fixed 2-year period, and then mostly don't get absorbed as associate. And if you come back, there is always that 2 years thing which can come back to kind of help you if you go back to the institution and say that, okay, here I am back after my MBA and consider me for the associate kind of position. So that's another thing. And then the entire the various large number of consultancies, accounting firms, the big fours take now in holds again across all their practices. Big fours have a lot of practices in India. They do commercial diligence, they do auditing, they do corporate advisory work, they do valuation, a lot of work. And across all of this, I think they hire graduates now. So I think broadly, I think the opportunities are far more, and one needs to kind of get into this. And from what I'm aware, a lot of this gets done through the placement week, which now happens across a lot of the campuses. And that's what I was kind of inquiring earlier with Vatsalya, whether you guys have something like that. Because one-on-one reaching out to people, which works, I think, well in a lot of international markets, does not work as well in India. So while people will entertain off and on, but more often these are through the campus placements, which is organized at the relevant campuses. And today, most of the good colleges, whether it's DU colleges or it is Xavier's NM or Ashoka and the likes, all of these guys have a campus placement where their graduates are able to kind of take advantage of these opportunities which have opened up. So I thought I will kind of pause here. I have given you a brief kind of a thing of what kind of thing exists, and I will open up to questions, and anyone feel free. I'm not an expert in the field. I'm telling you from what I've seen around me, but I'm happy to help and answer any questions which come. Yeah, go ahead, Ayush.
Hello, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you a lot for taking this time for the session. I really appreciate it. So just a question. If I want to pursue a field of finance, now I'm pursuing a bachelor's in economics degree. So as a student who's pursuing economics, is prior knowledge or some sort of background in finance required? Let's say, like, do I need to have knowledge about the financial instruments prior to applying it, or is there a training given? And is there any particular skill set that a company looks in for while hiring these candidates? I just wanted to ask this so that I could probably build my application accordingly.
Ayush, I think this is a very good question and also a very relevant one. And this is something that is asked again and again. And I can tell you this as being on the other side of the table. the younger you are taking a person, the less you are looking for skill sets, the more you are looking for the right attitude and aptitude, which can be demonstrated in various ways. So it's not that I'm looking for you to be an expert in any area of finance, or I expecting you to have a lot of degrees on you. But if you say that you are interested in something, you should back that with action. And this is something that I feel a lot of people walk in. And I know there is a charm around private equity. A lot of people want to get into private equity over a period of time. And they say, oh, I would love to do private equity. And I say, okay, tell me which is your favorite private equity fund. And then they possibly don't know of a private equity fund. Or if they have heard the names, I'll say, okay, tell me top which deal of that do they like? They don't know a single deal. So to say that you want to do something should be back, show that passion in whatever you're doing, even if it is in whatever, if you're studying economics, if you're passionate about economics, demonstrate that through what you have done and bring that out in interview. I don't think people are looking to hire people who are already there in terms of field of finance. Graduates are expected to learn more on the job. You need to show that you have the right attitude to learn, and whatever you have done till that point of time in your life, you have given it all that you have. And I think that's very critical, Ayush. I think that's something that is really missing in a lot of people, because a lot of us, while we are doing X, we are always thinking about the next day, the next, what do I need to do next to be able to, what next in my life, what next stage. Like you guys are right now concerned about your job, and rightfully so. But what you're doing right now, if you do that well, and if you're able to convince the interviewer that you have done that well, and I think that's what the guy's looking for.
All right. So thank you. So that clarifies a lot. Went out a lot. I think Shivani has a question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for taking this session. So I just had one question for you, which is how different is the entry into the field of finance from an economics background and let's say a math or a data sciences background?
Okay, so I think there are some jobs which will need maths, which are hardcore. Let's say if you're on the derivative trading desk of something, a maths background is something that people will kind of prefer. But most of the jobs that I spoke about, almost all of them are kind of really they don't care about whether you have economics or commerce or science or maths as a background, and so long as you are, again, if you're applying for a job, you should know about what you're applying for. And I think that's the most important thing. If you are applying for an investment banking job to a particular firm, you should know about the firm, you should know about investment banking, you should understand, and it should not be just a flimsy knowledge. Demonstrate that you are really understand what you are applying for, what you will do. That's important. I don't think maths or any other background is very relevant for most of the jobs. For some job, I agree. For some job, it might be kind of really, if the bread and butter of that is kind of doing option pricing of something, they would expect you to kind of have done that in your.
Just a follow-up question, if you don't mind, sir.
Sure.
So since you did talk about like certain jobs in investment banking itself, which do prefer an economics background or rather don't have a preference, could you like list out a few specific areas itself in investment banking that don't really require a math background as such, considering that most of my peers as well are pursuing economics?
Piyush, you're muted.
Sorry. So I was saying that within investment banking, we have the global investment banks and the Indian investment banks. So the global investment banks back offices usually end up being outsourced offices for their several divisions. It could be the M&A division, corporate finance division, or their global trading desks. And so anything which is M&A, corporate finance, or equity fundraise kind of back-end kind of thing does not really require maths. It does more require understanding of the subject than background in maths. Similarly, most of the Indian investment banks actually don't care. As in, see, what I think what we confuse is background in maths is more aptitude for maths, and or even just the fact that somebody has studied maths in undergrad at, let's say, one of the prestigious institutions, just kind of shows that he has the basic threads which one is looking for. But not having that is not a disadvantage in most of the places.
I think Yashvardhan had his hand up for a while. Please go ahead, Yash.
Uh, Good evening, sir. So what I wanted to ask was, while recruiting, uh, what kind of weight does a certain certification program add to, let's say, for a private equity profile or a finance profile? For
Right.
example, we talked about CFA and FRM.
Right. So yes, I think it helps. Definitely it helps if you have a CFA for any kind of thing which is oriented towards investment, be it let's say equity research, fund management, or private equity. A CFA helps because it demonstrates several things. CFA is firstly, I think, the only global program which kind of addresses actually what skill sets are required and probably relevant early on in your life as a research analyst, which is what you're doing. Whatever you call it, mostly you're doing research, back-end research, or your seniors in your early years of life. And some of that, I think, is you get exposed to while doing CFA, and hence CFA is definitely relevant. It's something which is recognized globally. And so if you ask me if it is relevant, yes, definitely it is. But you have to understand over a period of time, all of these are things which are just kind of makes you kind of reach that interviewer. None of this kind of makes you click. These are not the reasons why somebody will give you a job. You have a CFA or a FRM is not the reason. How you demonstrate whatever area. So let's say you've done a project in let's say in economics only. Let's say you've done a macroeconomic project on India. What really are we in for the next 10 years of high level of growth? And you're able to demonstrate, you understand that inside out. What really are the contributing factors and which way it is. It's not important to be right. It's important to have a very sound logic. It's important to have done being very thorough with your work and be able to convince the other person that this is what you feel and this is what you will do. You guys, I think, don't expect too much of yourself. I think you guys take yourself more seriously than what the interviewer will be taking you. The fact that you are in that interview room means he considers your qualifications to be enough. There, it is not about once you reach that interview room, it's not about the qualification. It's about what you're able to tell him, about what you've done.
Thank you, sir.
Dhruv Jain, you've had your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm audible. Yeah. All right, so
Go ahead.
good evening, sir. Thank you for taking this session. So my question was regarding law students. So I come from a law background. I'm entering my penultimate year, and I have a good amount of interest in private equity, and I've done projects, publications, as well as worked in major law firms who specialize in private equity itself. I've worked on deals involving that. So let's say I want to transition into the business side of the role, not as a lawyer, but as an investment professional right out of my law school. So what form of firm, firstly, whether a private equity firm would even entertain my profile, given that not a lot of law students try to even enter into the private equity domain as a business professional. And secondly, whether I should be working as in a private equity law firm for a couple of years, and then take up an MBA and then transition into a business role.
Right. So, Dhruv, it's interesting because one is that obviously we have not really recruited people with law background, and we have not really come across too many people from law background wanting to move on to the business side. But at the same time, I think the earlier you do that, the earlier you decide in your career, and given that already you are studying law and you have decided you want to move to the business side of things, I think the better it is for you being clear earlier. Because the fact of working with a law firm and assuming that you will move to the business side of private equity is a very, very difficult one. I think it can work out. I won't say that it does not. You are exceptional in what you do. You are able to demonstrate, and private equity guys like you, they might take you in. But most likely, if they take you in, they will take you in as an in-house lawyer rather than somebody who is kind of moving to business side. So if you have decided, I think it's something that you should kind of start kind of practicing. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, Dhruv, I think knowing deals through newspaper reading is not about saying that, okay, I want to get into private equity and I know, okay, this deal has happened yesterday and this deal has happened the day before. Anybody can read the newspaper and can rattle that off. But if you're able to say this deal has happened and I believe this is a good deal because of these 5 reasons, or if you have even more courage to say this is a bad deal because of these 5 reasons, I think that's what people like. And again, to reiterate, there is no right wrong. There has to be, you have to have a convincing logic what you believe is wrong for your own reasons, and demonstrating that early and trying that early. Don't, as in, if you want my advice, I wouldn't say that if you're very certain, try that route of going to a law firm and then hoping to make over to private equity. If you want to try that as early as possible. Tell people that you have realized that this is what you want to do. So people will kind of be cognizant of that and maybe give you a chance.
So just a follow up to that question. So given that my stage, I'm going to graduate in 2 years. So what sort of firms would I be looking at applying? Because I don't think a lot of private equity firms or even investment banks, they, at least investment banks do, but private equity firms do not publish these vacancies. So should I just directly apply to them and say that, okay, I need to start off directly in a business role?
Yeah. So on that, I think, again, I touched up briefly in terms of the process of recruitment in India. Actually, most of it happens through campus. And the earlier your university is able to kind of organize the efforts that you guys are doing through a formal process, the better it is in terms of engaging or trying to enter into the job world. Otherwise, I think even if you write to people one-on-one, I think it's not that people don't respond. The chances are lower. Obviously, you have to understand on an average, people get hundreds and thousands of mails in corporate world. And hence you've got him on a bad day or a good day. It's your luck then. So it's best to kind of try to bring in that process at the university. And in the absence of that, writing is not a bad idea. Write to them, don't be discouraged. Send follow-ups, reminders, because it's not rude to send reminders, send gentle reminders, and because people are busy, people miss emails, and keep at it. I think so long as you have reached the right person, I think there is a likelihood that somebody might say, okay, this guy has been knocking long enough, let's hear what he has to say.
Thank you, sir.
So if I may, there are no other questions. So I actually have 3 follow-up questions to what you spoke. My first one is because you told about the importance of certificate programs like CFA, FRM. So I just wanted to know, what factors does one take into consideration for which certification course to provide? Like if I want to choose between CFA or FRM or maybe an MBA course, what factors should I take into consideration, like to understand which one is the right course to pursue? Because as undergraduate students, not many people guide us about it. Like mostly people just keep talking about CFA, but there are people who do end up like, just wanted to clarity on this particular thing.
Right. Interesting and difficult, I used to answer. So I would say that FRM and CFA are actually very different. And I think people know it, as in CFA is more for investment professionals, people who are practicing in investments, whether in the public or the private markets, and whether on the buy side or the sell side. So today, actually, in Indian public markets, almost all fund managers, research analysts on buy side, sell side, almost all of them would have a CFA. And again, it's not that if you have a CFA, you get in there. It's just the basic. It's something which is expected, and everyone, even people are older who had not done earlier in their life are kind of trying to do that, because it's expected that almost everyone in that field is kind of doing that. FRM is more relevant. I actually done CFA 15 years back. So I don't remember much of it, but yeah, I can tell you from that. But FRM, I know of people around me who have done, and it's more related to risk management and not as much to investments. So becomes relevant to more of risk management profiles rather than, so the kind of job that you're looking for kind of makes you decide between CFA and FRA. And I think MBA is very different from these. And when one is looking at one's career, CFA, FRM are these both of these, any of these courses which are kind of just distance learning and no interaction with anybody, not a campus-based learning where you're not immersing into either learning or even group living and trying to learn from all of that. I think does not really prepare you as well as what MBA does. So I think where you guys are in your careers over a period of time based on what you want to do, even if you have a CFA or FRM, I think the MBA is almost a certainty. I think some people kind of start doing what they like and decide against doing an MBA. But mostly in finance fields, especially, and some of the other fields, I think are kind of less focused on your post graduation. But finance field is more academically kind of oriented, and hence having an MBA from a good institution is something which is almost a must over a period of time.
Right. So thank you a lot. That gives you a little more clarity in terms of the certificate. Now, this is coming to a little more about the application process part. Considering we are a comparatively new university, we still don't have an alumni system. So our placement structure is a work in progress. So most of us have to apply to placements on our own individually. So, so in your the same, since you're on the other side of the table, what I as a student and my peers like have to do to maximize the chance to get selected, because as you said, most placements happen through a placement structure system. If I have to apply individually, how do I maximize my probability of getting selected? If I'm if you can give some sort of insight on that.
Yeah. I think send your resume with a pair. I think it might help. So it's simple, Ayush. I think when you're sending out these resumes, and so you are sending out to a lot of people. You're reaching out to LinkedIn. You're reaching out to a lot of kind of forums. And I think what one has to realize is that people usually people that you reach out to are receptive to things, but it's just that people might be busy in 100 other things and might not able to respond at the pace at which you would like, given where you are in your career. So it's have a great resume, demonstrate interest and passion upfront in your email that you write, in your messaging that you write. Demonstrate what you're doing. Catch his interest early. Don't send a thing that you are this from this college and you have studied eco and you would want to get in private equity. These 5 lines mean nothing to a recruiter, because that's anyways, you don't even have to say, I can see that on your profile, right? Say something, catch his interest that you would really like, and you have done something for which something which is relevant to the field that you're trying to enter. So which will become, and that's where the thing about not trying too wide, but narrowing your focus and kind of working in that, and really not trying that, okay, wherever I get, I'll kind of get the job, kind of helps. At least have 2-3 areas of interest, do your work in that, and tell those guys upfront that, see, I'm doing this, I'm really interested, and I would like to, and there is no harm in kind of reaching out to people and saying, okay, if you don't want to give me a job, fine, I want to take your help to understand how I can shape my career and what I'm doing. Am I going in the right direction? People are all, I've seen more people being helpful than not. So wherever you get stuck and you feel that, okay, you're not able to move forward, take people's help in the area that you want to be. Reach out to more and more people. People are receptive is all I can say. Don't just send out, and just make a meaningful kind of reach out thing. Don't make a generic reach out. Can you please help me kind of thing. That does not work. So I hope that question, that answers your question.
Yes. Just to follow up on it, now because we have our placement structure is something that is work in progress. We're trying to make it a student led initiative. So because we are very new to this, so what would be your advice on how do we approach companies in the field of finance to come for placements in to campus? If you could just tell us a bit of idea on what the procedure is and like how do we attract to them? If you give you insight, that'll be really helpful in general.
So I'm going to be doing a bit of kite flying and saying from my memory from 25 years back, I used to be part of the placement cell at my post-graduation institute. And I can tell you it's a long-term process. It doesn't happen in a day. Unfortunately, this is something that all, whether good or bad institutions, young institutions have to go through. It's not that you will write to somebody, whether you're good or bad, they will want to hear you again and again, see you again and again before they kind of decide to participate in your placement process. There is no easy way to do it. It's the usual process of how you will build an institution. You make out a possible kind of list of companies in each of these sectors, find out who are the recruitment guys, keep reaching out to them. And you have to, well, as an even as a postgrad college, we used to have a very, very extensive reach out program, including physical meetings, including people going out of town and meeting all of these guys. And a very, very continuous both phone as well as email follow-up, because it's a tedious process. You will hit a lot of bottlenecks. You will have a lot of false starts with each institution before you are able to kind of reach the right guy. And then why should you add somebody? Why should you add a new university? What do you bring to the fold? It has to be told again and again. But that's the way, and hopefully, kind of some of the guys get convinced easy. Some of the guys for whom your local university kind of see the merit in that. You make a start, and then obviously you are able to repeat the names which are there already and come to your campus and convince others. But it is a long-term kind of a process.
Yes. So just one last one. Sorry for asking a lot of questions, but apart from LinkedIn, is there any other platform that we could probably utilize to get internship placements or reach out to potential HRs for internship placement? Like, because LinkedIn is one such thing I understand, but like it's still a little complicated process to get meaningful internships there, and like even reaching out to HRs is a little complicated. Is there any other forum that you probably recommend?
I don't know. As a platform, I can't think of anything else. Otherwise, it's direct emails. I can't think of any other platform to reach out to people.
Right. So, all right. So thank you a lot, sir. I think that gives a lot of clarity.
Sure.
Shivani, if you want to go ahead with your question.
Yes, sir. Just one more question that kind of came to my head while you were talking about internships and stuff. So, how important is it to streamline your internships in the direction of the field that you want to get into? Like, for example, if I want to be working in private equity someday in the future, how important is it for me to completely streamline my entire resume towards that? Like, is that more advisable or is diversification more advisable?
Swani, I think at your age, I didn't know what I wanted to do the next day. Forget about the rest of my career. So, that's why I'm saying you people take yourself more seriously, thinking about 20 years of your career than what we did. We were fortunate. I think we had 20 years back, there were more opportunities. Life was easier, definitely, than what it is for you guys. But nobody expects you to know fully what you want to do 5 years later. So to say that if 5 years later, if you're going to appear for a P interview and people will say, why do you have this and that on your resume? That's not going to happen. People are today, and more so today, failures are also accepted as much. Everything is accepted. Go out and do things. People value that you have been adventurous and have several things on your resume, then not known what you want to do. We have had people, even as private equity interns, and within few months they said, no, I don't want to be in private equity, I want to do something else. So people, unless you are able to kind of expose yourself to more fields, you will not know. And I keep telling this, I say this to almost every kid who comes to me and says that we want to be in private equity. I said, after doing private equity 6 months, you might not say so. Private equity is not what it seems from outside. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of non-finance. Actually, in India, private equity is a lot of operating work which is something that you learn over a period of time, and hence the younger you are, the more I would say that you should kind of go towards, if you want to be in financial services, do more investment banking, research, those kind of jobs, and learn more, and then see whether, if still this interests you, you will move towards this. You're not supposed to kind of really move in one direction, not because of diversification or anything, just because you're not supposed to know everything. You're not supposed to know your interest so clearly, so early.
If you don't mind me chipping in with a question.
Please.
So this is about I mean, of course, you would appreciate more than anybody else in this meeting, because it's a lucrative career. It is also difficult to get in. So the entry barriers are of course going to be higher. And because there are so many people trying to get in, that creates the possibility for a lot of proposed side entrances, which may not work out, but may seem like a good opportunity to give it a go. So I'll give you an example. I came across this idea that a lot of students have come upon websites which allow them to participate in a 10-month program or a 12-month program where they put in their own money, some initial amount. And the idea is that we'll let you play around with an account with X amount of money, and 12 months later you'll get that money, and you might have the opportunity to become an analyst in our firm, and so on. Now, my concern around this has been, one, so I've tried to the limited extent that I can to identify few which I know are frauds, which are obviously frauds. The others may not be frauds in the simple sense of the word, in the sense that they might not necessarily just be taking your money and say running away with it. But the promises that they are making is difficult for somebody like me to verify. Is that something, have you ever come across a successful person coming or say using this route, saying that, I did this 11-month program where I got to play with real money after having paid for it?
So Atsalya, you're being kind to them. I would say 100% of them are frauds. So when people, whether they run away with your money or they make false promises to kids, both of them puts them in the category of being fraud. I don't know of a single person around me or I've interviewed or who has done something like this and been successful out of this. So this is just a making money gimmick by people. Don't get into this. There are people, if they're taking money from you to expose you to something, it is just a money making gimmick. It is a fraud. Don't get into that, guys, at all. The world doesn't come to an end. I'm telling you, you will find your place. It's a long life. You will find your place. You guys are showing initiative at this age. I'm telling you, at this age, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And during graduation, I didn't care about my career to be part of something like this. I would have been partying somewhere. You guys are showing initiative. You care enough. You will find your place. And today, I think the opportunities, we have not discussed the entire startup world. The opportunities within finance in startup, also fintech. Today only the newspaper said there are 4,700 startups, fintech startups in India. So they are hungry for people with passion. And I think that's at your age, the energy and passion that you will bring to anything will be more than what is required by anybody. I think if people had to hire the best people for all jobs, there would be only one person that they can hire, right? I can't, as in the same guy can't be hired by all the companies, and only one person can't be hired. So there is a place for all of us. There is no need to get worried and fall for these kind of schemes. Though it might seem, and I've heard you guys, there is this thing, you guys don't have that placement week, you kind of are feeling that might have an impact. It does not matter. I think if you reach out to people, if you are genuinely interested in something, tell people repeatedly, as in just keep at it, make a long list of companies which are in that sector, try to reach out to as many people as you can within that, and reach out. And before you do all of this, genuinely ask yourself, this is what you want to do. And if you want to do that, take a month, 2 months to prepare yourself. Because being prepared so that you are able to convince the other person is more important, because if you get one opportunity and you waste it, that will be far worse than not getting an opportunity. So prepare yourself, and I'm sure opportunities will knock at your door. Better ones than what you can think of right now.
We have a question from Varun. Please go ahead. And please switch on your camera if you can.
So I'm so sorry. I'm out on a vacation, so I have my friends at the back, so I won't be able to. But good afternoon, sir. So I wanted to ask, so as you said, over a period of time when MBA sort of becomes important or a PG becomes important. So sir, now if what I was thinking was that this is uncertain, like the way is uncertain, like of applying for a job straight after undergrad, all of that. If I think that right now, if I can just focus on my academics, like core academics, and try to get into a respectable MA college or a postgraduate college, and then look for opportunities in finance and all. So is that misplaced or is that right?
That used to be when I don't know if you joined late. I was telling about the way my career took shape. So 20 years back, that was a done thing, because the opportunities for graduates were even lesser here, Varun, at that point of time. But today, I think because it has opened up, and also I think clearly, and it's been, I think, across the world, we were kind of late to the game, but you need to work to be able to make the most of the postgraduate degree. It's not just acads, especially an MBA is not just acads. You learn a lot more if you've worked for 3-4 years. Your ability to kind of appreciate what is being taught is far more, and hence I would suggest that if you're able to do a few years of work before you go for your postgrad is the more kind of accepted thing today, and is the preferred thing. You actually will benefit on both sides. You would have worked a bit, and your MBA will be more fruitful. And post MBA, also people today expect people to have a few years experience pre MBA, and both ways kind of works in your favor.
All right, sir.
Also, to quickly jump in at this stage, we just have my voice is echoing. Is that just me, or is everybody having that? Okay, seems to be better now. Just to build on what Varun asked, this is a question that goes back. I'm sure, as you mentioned, back in 1998, after your BCom, there weren't really many job opportunities after bachelor's. I did mine about 11 years after you. And I happened, so my first job was what would be called a campus placement as an associate analyst. In fact, Sumit and I got our first jobs together, roughly at the same time. The trouble even back then, as you pointed out, was the promise that as an 18-year-old you buy into when you're getting into a degree is that the degree gets you a job, not understanding that the degree is a signal of the skills that you are expected to have.
Right.
So even back then, once you get to the stage that you go out and enter the labor force or the labor market, you very quickly realize that the value of a degree isn't what you were told it was. And that is when you try and find different ways of embellishing it. If you come from an IIT, maybe you don't have to embellish it too much. If you came from a Delhi University college like I did, there's still some work required. I'm interested in your views on trying to draw parallels between what happened in the tech sector in India when the intake went through the roof over the last 10, 15 years.
Right.
But the ability to identify talent did not keep pace, because they were still doing the same, they were still using the same processes that they were used to, but now they had to hire, say, 8,000 people, and they just
Right.
had no idea how to do it. So from what I recall of my friends back in the day was there was a move towards, if you do not come from a highly embellished degree granting institution, you build up alternative methods. So back then the idea was that you would set up, say, I mean, GitHub is a recent thing, but back then you would set up some kind of public project where essentially you put up your skills on display. So as you mentioned, if you could go to an interview and make a claim about why this deal was or was not good and have 5 reasons for it, that is of course at the interview stage, which means you have already cleared the first level of screening. Would it potentially be useful for people who are really into this to start considering putting out their thoughts and ideas out in the public domain? In any case, doing it is much, much easier today than it was 15 years ago. And if you're really interested in it, you must be able to write a decent write-up, like a synopsis or a brief that you
Right.
put up. If nothing else, you are building up a body of work that you can claim to have put in time and effort. And of course, having built your skills by the virtue of having participated in. Is that something that you see happening, or would that be something that you would like to see happening as somebody who would be recruiting from these, let's say, the larger pool of students going forward?
Right. It's very interesting what you said, and I think I agree with a lot of the things that you said in terms of, uh, uh, I think any institution, people studying, not really valuing what they're studying, but valuing just the kind of job that they are kind of at the end of the thing. And I think it's true for us across. I think school people are Indian schools are known for where their students end up in colleges. Colleges are known for where they end up in kind of in jobs rather than the education which is being provided. And I think uh, it's only later that people start to realize that it is what you did over there is far more important than where you land from there. And doing, and I'm again, I think I'm a sucker for repeating my thoughts, but just doing what you like is so important. I think if you're doing economics and if you want to do economic research, putting just immersing yourself in that right now where you are is far more important than kind of really thinking, okay, I want to be in private equity 10 years later and I should prepare a resume for that, which takes me that path. Your resume will be prepared if you do what you love. Figure out if you know, and it can change, and then that's the beauty today, Vatsalya, versus what it was for you and me. Possibly 15 years back, people were not not as appreciative of failures and wanting to change things. Today, I think it's the done thing. Every 6 months, people change their mind in terms of what they want to do. But when you are doing something, do it to the best of your capability. So if you believe that today you want to do, if you want to follow a thing, I fully agree. Put it out there in the world. Whatever you want to do, write blogs, write your views on LinkedIn, on Twitter. There are 100 ways in terms of engaging people, putting your views out and getting comments and engaging with them, and really demonstrating that okay, this is something that I want to do. I don't care whether I have a job in it or not. If somebody tells me you want to be in investment, nobody stops you from buying one share of something in the market. All of us have $500 or $1,000 to buy a share in the market. Even that one share, if you buy and if you are able to demonstrate that, okay, see, this is how I am involved in the public markets and I am doing this. This is the reason why I'm investing in this company. And this is my portfolio and this is done, this kind of return, absolute amount doesn't matter. All of this kind of demonstrates your interest phenomenally. So not, and there is nothing to be afraid of. Follow your interest, put it out there in the world. Uh, only accounts, only degrees don't help you today. Accounts and degrees take you to a level, but today everything is available. What do we need to learn? As in today, with all of these online courses across all platforms, you can learn from whichever university you want to, whatever course you want to. But having that interest, pursuing it, putting it out in the world fearlessly, and then engaging with the world to kind of say that this is my view. And so while don't be afraid to put out your view, but at the same time, don't be afraid to correct yourself when you find yourself to be wrong. So it's far easier for to be done. It's far easier to be done today than what it was earlier. Uh, Earlier, there was no way. Write research papers if you really want to be in eco and want to do things. Or I think there is umpteen number of things that one can do. There are, I think today kids start internship in school. So take as much internship as you can. Each thing that you do will teach you something. So don't say that okay, this is maybe it's too early for me, or it's something. Shall I kind of going back to one of the questions which was asked? Should I focus on accounts alone? Accounts does not, as in accounts obviously is important, but it's only important as much. Just kind of having any kind of practical experience exposure really matters a lot, and that could be by either doing internships or research papers or putting your views in any public forums, whichever way. But demonstrating that Vatsala is so important today. And it gets built over a period of time. You realize that, okay, your body of knowledge kind of really starts to expand, and you start suddenly you start having a peer group. Even though you are still in college, you could be interacting with people who have been in that field and doing that for several years. And before you know it, you will start making that peer group, which will become relevant for you as you go forward. Whether looking for a job or looking for a job is not the end in itself. Even later on, when you want to kind of really look for views on something, who do you kind of turn to? These could be people who become your kind of people bouncing boards for ideas and thoughts. So strongly encourage that.
Great, thanks. I think we have a question from Hari. Go ahead, please.
Uh, Good evening, sir. Thank you for taking the time out to have the session. Sir, I'm at a stage where I'm in my final year and I have no clue, what's ahead and what to do next. I don't know if I have to go abroad, if I have to stay back in India, what to study. And I'm really clueless about what to do. And I have like a fair bit of idea about, the if there is a job opportunity, I feel like I can take it up right now and go for my do my further education later on. At this point, sir, what do you suggest, like paying after undergrad and paying the fee which is heavy going abroad? Do you think it's actually that worth it, the amount which we are paying for the fee, or like is it better to search for opportunities in India? Because the fees of good colleges are like really high, and I'm not like a student who feels like I'll get a scholarship and depend on the finance given by the college, but trying to depend on my own. So what do you think, what do you suggest for me, like the next step? Like many of my friends are also really clueless. What do you suggest for us, like what to do?
Sorry, I think I could tell you this, that uh, being clueless is not really a problem. At your age, being clueless is what you should be. A lot of the people are fairly clued on, and I get very surprised when they say, "This is what I want to do 5 years, 7 years hence, or tomorrow." It's okay to be confused right now. It's okay if you do not know which way do you want to head, but be open to opportunities. Keep kind of just broadly try and see if you're able to prepare yourself for a particular field, even if you're not sure about whether you want to stay in India, you want to go outside, you want to study or work right away. But I'm sure that you started getting some areas, you started realizing there are some areas which interest you more than others. Even if it is by way of excluding things that you don't want to do, there are various different ways of reaching there, but having some areas of interest and and kind of really pursuing that. And there is no right answer to going out on studying or not. It's a very personal question. I agree, it's a very expensive job doing a postgrad outside India, and ROI wise, it possibly there are enough studies to say that does not really make sense ROI wise. But I think when one talks about doing post graduation, it's not just kind of ROI in terms of just where your salary takes you. It's the shape that your career takes, and opportunities which might possibly never come to your door if you do not have a postgrad. Now that is also changing. I think a lot of the startup world does not care as much about your post graduation or your qualification, and really, so world is evolving fast. There are more kids today who are taking a conscious choice, making the choice that, okay, I'm not going to do a postgrad because of the exact question that you asked about. The ROI just never really stacks up. But for one to be able to decide that, one should be already doing something that they like. Okay. Uh, Otherwise, if you're not sure of what you want to do, or you don't like what you want to do, then obviously doing a postgrad makes sense. One is that it exposes you to a lot many more things. The other is that it gives you the chance to again start your career post your MBA, and kind of give another crack at it. But if you're not sure, then kind of saying and then not doing an MBA is not really some. I would suggest still try to get a job, do for a few years, and then only go for an MBA. But keep that on your radar. Don't close that. because of the finance issue today, maybe a few years later, it might not kind of seem as much, or maybe you'll get through Indian postgrad. Indian postgraduations are obviously far cheaper, so maybe you'll get through a good college in India, and you might want to consider that. But yeah, I think in India still post graduation is something that is far more relevant than it is possibly outside. But you can't do away with this. I think doing away with this at this stage, closing your mind to it is not a good idea.
Yes, I get the point. Like because of the world, like I don't know if the ROI, the return on investment going abroad is like a very huge risk for me personally. And I don't, it might be the case for different people, have different cases. So that's what is making me think about my opportunities. That's why I'm really confused. Yeah. Thank you for helping me out.
As we're running into the last few minutes of the hour that we had requested you for your time, how about a slightly differing question? And this is also something that I am genuinely interested in. So for many of us when we were younger, maybe somebody wanted to become a cricketer, somebody wanted to become a fighter pilot. The kind of things that you see from a distance and they'll seem like the best things in the world to do. Finance seems to be that thing for early adulthood. That you have matured, you've realized that you don't have the hand-eye coordination to become a cricketer or the daredevilry to become a jet pilot, and you're maturing a little. And at that time, finance seems to be the most lucrative option, particularly for students who are already into programs like economics, or we also have students from banking and finance at the moment. Would you be willing to and take some time just to peel the curtain back a little bit? Because a lot of times you don't know what it is until you get there. And if you spend the next 4 or 5 years of your life investing in yourself to be able to get there, sometimes it can be very disappointing. So I did a PhD and did a bunch of things for 6, 7 years to get into academia. And it wasn't until I became a professor that I realized that, it is not all that it was made out to be.
Right.
So would you be willing to take some time out and just give a sneak peek inside what it looks like, how it is?
Sure. I think, but Vatsalya, most of life is not what it seems to be. So I think that's almost, and I kind of refer to private equity in that sense, but I'm happy to kind of say the first few years in financial services, if you guys end up with a financial services job, whatever you do will be a 16 to 18 hour of work. And a lot of that time will be done doing very, very routine, tedious work, and is not something that a lot of the people enjoy. Okay. Slowly, as you, and it's all back end work. Sometimes you might be doing interesting work, sometimes, but most of the times it might not necessarily be up your alley. You realize only after a point of time that it takes a long time for you to really, you think that investment banking or private equity is deal making. Deal making is 10% of the time. And deal making is done usually by your seniors and possibly people who are 15 years your seniors. So a lot of the time you're doing basic research, preparing slides again and again. And I can tell you people, you for a presentation, usually a consultancy, if let's say they are going to pitch for something, the analyst will redo that a single slide at least 10 times. Okay. His manager versus the partner thinks so differently. He will work all night, prepare 50 slides, and then his manager will look at it and say it's all crap. Redo the entire 50 slides, and he will spend another 2 nights working on that. And on the fourth day, the partner will look at it and say it's all crap, and will again start afresh. So that's I can't tell you how often this happens. It's not that there is no learning in all of this. There is actually a lot of learning, but it is a lot of this rut work and a lot of hard work. People start struggling for work-life balance very early in finance, and kind of say that, okay, whether they are in for 16, 18 hours and usually at least 6 days a week, at least a lot of them are working on Sundays. Uh, and the higher the pay, I can tell you, the more is the hours. Uh, there is no, it's not that if the pay is too low, you're not going to work. But I can tell you the global investment banks or Ps really make their analysts work very, very hard. They feel that it's something that that's really preparing them for the next years, but it might not necessarily be for everyone. And that's one bit of it. The other is I feel like financial services, when one sees as a field, and I think it peaked somewhere globally and in India, everywhere, financial services in terms of both job prospect as well as pays, everything peaked with the entire 2008 crisis. And since then, actually, most of the jobs outside financial services, all the other kind of industries have kind of caught on. Even in India, if you see the job parity, the pay parity which has happened outside of financial services, the increase that has happened, a lot of parity today in what a guy will be making in a lot of industries versus financial services, which was very, very the disparity was extremely high 10 years, 12 years back. So some of that which kind of comes in today is possibly seeing their parents or their parents' friends having done a lot well being in financial services. But whether the next 20 years is going to be for financial services, I'm not too sure. That investment banks, there was a time when people used to make $1 million kind of bonuses in investment banks. I think those kind of, there might still be people who do, but the number of people who do that and the frequency with which people do is far, far lesser. And the pays both in startups or consumer companies, consulting, all of these have really caught up, and financial services not really what the real kind of that charm which was there. I don't think it keeps up to it right now. So I think both of these ways, if you see, I think a lot of people kind of come in and realize, okay, this is not what you want to do, and then kind of settle for something else over a period of time. And it's not a rarity. Actually, it happens quite often. We have had people in our firm, we have had a lot of people around us working in investment banks kind of say that after doing for a few years that this is not definitely what I want to do. And also another thing which people feel is that, see, actually what is financial services? Be it banking, commercial banking, or investment banking, it is all a way of financial intermediation. Even private equity, while you are doing a lot of operating work, there is a lot of financial intermediation you are doing. There are people with capital, there are people who want capital. So whether you are a bank, you're a private equity fund, you're an investment bank, you are somewhere within that process of providing that capital from the people who have it to the people who need it, right? That financial intermediation gets over a period of time, depending upon which there is a hype which gets created. There was a lot of hype regarding just private commercial banking in the early 90s in India, because in India, private banking, foreign banks or private banks were happening for the first time. So these jobs were seen as something which is lucrative, which was seen as something you're doing something great. But over a period of time, it became commoditized. Nobody today says my dream job is to work with ICICI as a commercial banker, because it's seen as you're doing just some mundane job. Then it became investment banking because it's seen as doing something fantastic, earning a lot of money for it. But over a period of time, you start to realize that, again, you're actually just a clog in the wheel working towards preparing companies and taking them to market and doing all of that. And I think somewhere private equity is also slowly moving towards that part where people are seeing they are also providers of capital only. Maybe they are providers of equity capital versus a debt capital which bank is giving. But it is actually at the end of the day financial intermediation. So when you simplify this and you see financial intermediation, people after even 10 years, 15 years of doing this, sometimes they realize, oh, I haven't really created anything. And we have seen this in some of the movies where people kind of do all of this and they say that, but in financial services, people kind of get that feel, oh, did I create something? Did I kind of really do something meaningful with my life? And I think that's something that can happen at any point of time, because you are actually doing only financial intermediation. There is some bit of satisfaction of kind of investing in the right companies or backing the right entrepreneurs, but it's eventually just passing on the capital to who they need. So yeah, I gave you 3 different ways of looking at it, why financial services is not as interesting. Deselling a bit to the kids that financial services is not necessarily what you think it is, whichever part of financial services it is. I genuinely feel that we are past the prime of financial services as an industry. And when you look at financial services 20 years later, it might be a very different shape. It started taking shape already to all the interventions which is happening through the fintech companies, I believe that banks today, what they look like will not be the same. So if one actually wants to be in finance space, they have really, even the entire startup space is a great space to be, because you will be at the cutting edge of redefining the industry structure and transforming it, rather than being part of institutions who have been and done that and possibly will not be around 10 years, 20 years later.
Great. Thank you so very much for all the information, including the one at the end, which I think puts things into perspective. It will, of course, continue to be something that's very lucrative, something that people want to build towards. But it's useful to have some context for how they should be thinking about years to come. I'm sure this was very, very useful for the students. It would, in fact, be excellent if over the years we can develop a greater interaction, that the students get to meet people who are actually doing the work that they're interested in. Us as academics can do our bit in terms of training them with specific skills, but my specific skill is teaching, which doesn't really help us talk about the world outside the university beyond a certain point. So it is wonderful having you around. Thank you for taking the time out, and I hope that we can do this again at some point in the future.
Thanks a lot, Vatsalya, for calling me, and it was a great pleasure interacting with everyone. And I wish all the best to them. And again, I would just like to say, don't worry too much. There are brighter days ahead. Something will fall your way. So,
Great.
all the best to everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.